Say when.
So I got that going for me, which is nice.
I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I'm doing it really, really well.
What am I supposed to do?
There's always Barber College.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Rivero. I'm with my co-hosts, David Quinn and Bob Quinn and Dave Korup, and we have Zach Smith with us today. Zach, how's it going?
That intro was awesome. I love, first off, the fact that it even just says my name. I appreciate that. So very thankful for that. But just in general, that was awesome. I might have to come on here at least once a month just to make sure.
You got an open invite, brother. Open
More than welcome, brother. More than welcome.
All right, let's start where we always start. Aaron Rodgers, week 57. It feels like. Does anybody feel like this is even close? Is anybody having doubts that it's going to happen? Because I'm starting to have doubts. I got to be honest.
Yes, I don't have a reason to believe in any direction. I guess for me, I've kind of just been waiting, thinking that this was going to be a thing that happened for quite some time. I was telling you guys I've had a graphic made for exactly a month now, actually March 10th, of Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers. And just thought it was a foregone conclusion. That was really before the Giants were even out of it. And there was this talk about the Vikings and stuff like that, which just never made sense to me. I always thought it was going to be Pittsburgh or retirement. And then, we get to the point where he's thrown with DK Metcalf. And it's well, that's not something that somebody that's considering retirement's probably taking their time to go do. So to me, it was Pittsburgh. I still think ultimately it's what happens. But man, trying to predict what Aaron Rodgers is going to do is a dangerous game that I don't necessarily want to get involved with. I jokingly told you guys that my ayahuasca trap that I laid out outside of the big night out last night did not work for Aaron Rodgers. But in all reality, I'm honestly thinking about trying it just to see if it makes something happen.
Yeah.
I mean, they kept telling us that it wasn't going to happen at the big night out. Everyone, Cavoli, everyone was saying, no, it's not happening. It's not happening. But that made me think it was going to happen.
Exactly. Pat McAfee comes from the WWE world. Kaboli now in the WWE world writing for them. I'm this would be, first off, so something the Steelers would have never have done in the past, allowed this to be where the announcement gets made at. But again, having a hard time predicting what they're doing as of late now too. But it would have made so much sense. It would have been a big return pop. Basically that you would used to see in the old WWF Attitude Era days if Aaron Rodgers would have walked out. So I honestly I didn't expect it to happen, but I went in last night watching that entire show thinking this could happen despite them trying to pour cold water on it.
Yeah, people were saying he might not actually show up physically, but it's a technicality. He'll show up on the Jumbotron or something from another location and announce it, but it didn't happen.
I think they were thinking, I guess when Jelly Roll went into the Renegade cover, that they thought if it was going to happen, that was the spot.
No. Here is where I thought it was going to legitimately, part of me was, I literally stood up from my couch when this happened. So they have Ben Roethlisberger come out. They were having 3 athletes come out, or it ended up being 5 because they had all 3 of the Penguins come out. But they made it seem like they were going to have one guy from each team come out and throw a football for $1 million each one to give away. So Ben comes out or whatever, and he's we're going from Ben to the next one. And I'm thinking he means quarterback, but he meant Paul Skeens. Dib the next one, the next great pitcher, obviously, and Paul Skeens watched out. But there was a split second where I was oh my God, the next one, does that mean the quarterback? And then Skeens, that is a lot of people were saying the Jelly Roll thing, but that's the moment that got me, was late in the show where he said the next one.
Yeah. How about Skeens being missing the throw? I mean, you would think he would have the arm. And apparently Sid threw the best ball.
Yeah, Steen's actually part of his warm up before each start is throwing a football. If you ever go to a Pirate game, you'll see him do it out in the outfield. It's one of his early portions of his warm up. But Sidney Crosby, he can do anything. He could probably play second base right now for the Pirates, their second best hitter.
Dude, when he took batting practice at PNC Park, he hit home runs.
Yeah, so zero doubt that he was going to make it. Paul Steen, I thought they were going to go 3 for 3, but Steen's messing it up.
So kind of glad they didn't, since an Eagles fan won.
That's true.
So if not yesterday, then when? When is this going to happen? I mean, we brought up. I heard on another podcast that he's from Green. He played for Green Bay for so long. He's going to try to steal the thunder of the draft and announce it that day. I mean, is this guy really this much of an egomaniac, where he's making the Steelers wait? and then he's going to announce it at the Green Bay's draft. I mean, I guess we can't put anything past him, right? At this point,
that's the new date that like everybody within like my community, like the people that watch or listen to my podcast and commenting on YouTube are thinking. That honestly hadn't occurred to me, but that seems to be the new date that people are talking about. But like, man, that could be from like the Steelers' perspective, unless they know for sure. Like that seems like a tough date to wait until.
Horrible.
Like the Monday before the draft needs to be the absolute latest that you can have an answer. I mean, because that could determine when or where you're taking a quarterback, obviously within the draft.
Yes.
Like, you have Aaron Rodgers, and we can get into obviously the Shador conversation, the other quarterbacks that would be involved in that conversation. But like, yeah, I just have a hard time thinking they can go into the draft with literally just Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson the day of.
There's reports that Mike Tomlin is now saying training camp is the line.
can't be. It can't be.
And here's the thing too, like with Aaron, right? Like a lot of people have said, like maybe he wants to skip the voluntary stuff and get all the way to training camp or whatever like that. Man, like, so I'm not going to speak to like from a physical standpoint what he would want to do and put his body through, but just like with how intricate everything that he specifically does, like I have no questions about his ability to pick up the terminology in the offense, but what he asks of his receivers, like the specific checks that he does and the hand stuff that he needs his receivers to get down, like that takes a lot of time. Like, so I think he needs the entirety of what this offseason is going to look like, or as much as possible, to work with these guys about like what he needs from them, or we're going to have a lot of Mike Williams situations where guys aren't getting to the red line.
I just for Aaron Rodgers to be working with DK Metcalf, like that they've never done that before.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like
his boy Devontae Adams literally plays for a team that's out at least somewhat in that area. Like
yeah. Right.
And like I know that there's not defenders on the field or anything like that, but they're running a concept that is an Arthur Smith staple. When they like that clip that surfaced of them doing that, which like, it could have just been a picture that surfaced or whatever, but no, it was a video where they're clearly running something that Arthur Smith has run, since his days as the Tennessee offensive coordinator, which AJ Brown ate in and became AJ Brown. So I don't know, everything to me, it's just like, why is it not signed yet? What are we doing?
Is this about money? I mean, most things are about money in the end. Is he holding out for more money? Still is not offering him what he
they're
wants.
They're not gonna negotiate against themselves. I mean, what is the?
That's what I said.
So
that's what you.
The number that I've heard is 1 year, $25 million that they've offered. I think if they were offering 30, he probably would have signed. And if he's going to hold out for $5 million, I don't know what the purpose is, because I don't think that Omar Khan's going to budge on that. I don't think this team's going to budge on that. And I don't know. Like they have no reason to. Like I don't know. Other than obviously desperation from their side, but at the same point, like, or same time, when have we seen that be the reason for them to, give in? Like, I could honestly see them rather just swallowing their pride and going forward without him than giving him that extra.
Maybe that's the holdup. He thinks he can squeeze more out of the Steelers, and they're not going to budge. And if Mike Tomlin's saying training camp, he's out of his goddamn mind. I mean, you can't go through the entire draft not knowing if you have a quarterback or not.
Yeah. Well, he says training camp.
They're playing chicken with each other.
I think they are.
I think so. I honestly, yeah, I think so. And I think, like I said, it's probably about a difference of like $5 million. I mean, when you look around from Aaron's perspective, if it's not the Steelers, then it's just like he's not retiring. Like that's not even a possibility to me at this point. So he's going to play the waiting game and like almost hope somebody gets hurt at some point during the off season. But then again, you're talking about him now having to jump on a moving train. And it's not so much about him, but everybody else having to learn him more so than him learning that offense.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's still hoping that JJ McCarthy will have a setback between now and, training camp, and he can jump on, because there's been plenty of reports he wants to go to Minnesota. And Minnesota just doesn't want him right now. It's crazy to me.
That's what Florio said yesterday before all the hype when he's on with Pony and Muller. He was like, "Hey, at this point, Minnesota has said no, but they didn't close the door. They left it open. So if McCarthy shows up and shits the bed, it may turn around being." And remember, when Brett Favre signed with Minnesota, it was in August.
Yeah, it's
so.
I really wanted Kwesi to just like completely close it, be like, yeah, we're
Mhm.
not signing it. Just like completely slam the door on the notion
Right.
of that happening. I get why he hasn't though, because they still do need like whether it's Aaron Rodgers or some backup quarterback, a veteran in some capacity they need. So I think that's probably why, like from a negotiation standpoint, they just don't completely close the door on it. But I would have loved if at his availability, he was like, yeah, that's not even like on the table for us. And we could just stop talking about them as a possibility.
Yeah, the problem is they haven't. So there's still that little
Yeah.
thing in the back of Aaron's mind where I could get to Minnesota. And I don't even know what Minnesota can pay him. I mean, I'm not familiar with their cap and what they have left, but I doubt
Right.
it. I think the Steelers are like the third or fourth most cap space left at this point. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
And without, they can create a bunch more that they haven't. I mean, right? Like the TJ Watt.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I guess that could be another topic.
gonna
Extension
be a
would
topic
obviously
for sure.
create a lot more cap space that currently isn't there, and they haven't done like any restructures. So like,
Yeah.
there's cap space is not an issue. That's not the reason that Aaron Rodgers hasn't been signed yet. It's just
And
Spot
don't forget,
track-
Chef Boyardee is still on the roster.
What's that?
Chef Boyardee, David's favorite player. Otherwise known as Cordarrelle Patterson for
Anyways,
That's only going to save you a couple mil.
Vikings cap space is at 18.1 million.
Yeah. I don't know if they could
They could
create more
restructure.
space to pay him. I guess they could.
that's probably like 8 million in function like that they could use
Yeah.
right now because every team, people make it seem like it's just a Steelers thing, but obviously like 10 million is kind of what you need to go into the season. They haven't obviously signed
Yes.
any of a
You gotta pay
draft
your
class
draft picks,
yet.
too.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
But 18, I mean, they'd have to make some moves if they're going to sign him for like 30 million if they wanted to bring him in.
Or does he play for them for 10 because he thinks they're better?
Or
I don't know.
play for
Nah.
them for 25 and say the Steelers' price is 30.
Yeah, maybe.
Something
Who
like
knows?
that. That could make sense.
From that standpoint, let me ask you guys a question because this was kind of like my thing with the waiting on Rodgers. I don't necessarily have an issue with them waiting on him from a perspective of like, because I don't think that there was a better option out there once they decided to go the direction they have for 2025 when it became very clear like they didn't want to be that invested in 2025. Obviously, like they wanted nothing to do with Russell Wilson, only wanted to go so high with Justin Fields. He looked at the rest of the market. But like, I think the thing for me is if it's so clear to everybody that Aaron Rodgers' preference really isn't to play for the Steelers, it's just they're the last team standing, the only option that he has. Do you even want him if you're like the
No.
last option?
No. I said from day one, I wanted Aaron Rodgers. I always wanted Aaron Rodgers. But
Mhm.
my patience has left the building like 2 weeks ago. If I was running the Steelers, I would have told him to kick sand at the end of March. Early, this is ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
They look so
and I think
bad in
that's
this.
fair.
They look so weak and needy and controlled. It's pathetic.
My biggest problem with this whole thing is I feel like it's handcuffed them as far as going after other players in general at any position. Because it seems like most of their moves have been very basic depth moves where they didn't spend a lot of money. And it's always made me feel like that's because they had to make sure they had enough money if they did land Rodgers. And that's what has pissed me off the most with this.
At least, I mean, I'm not saying that you're right or wrong within saying that. Just from like conversations that I've had and trying to get my understanding in terms of the free agency approach that they had this year, I think it was more so honestly like just being cognizant of the comp formula than it was like the Aaron Rodgers like needing to have that space available for him.
Yeah. and that's a
Again,
good
going
point.
back to like the 26 draft class to me being where they really wanted to make that dart throw. We don't need to talk about Jackson Dart just because I said Dart there. To me, I think it was very clear like that's where they wanted to take their next shot at quarterback, and that's why they approached free agency the way that they did, not necessarily the Aaron Rodgers potential financial ramifications.
All right, so that go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I was going to say, and looking back at this free agency class,
Mhm.
I just don't see where you wanted to spend. I think with the trade for DK, spending the money on that, okay, yeah, you got a really nice player there. I don't think there's any impact free agents this year. I don't. I didn't see anybody who was like, oh my God, I want to get DJ Reed. Okay, he's a nice corner too.
Yeah, that's my issue. Is I wanted them to get one of them top corners available. That's what I wanted.
Well, to be
But
honest,
that
I mean,
was Slay,
unless he falls off a cliff, and I get the age of 34, there's certainly the possibility of that happening. But if he has the same year that he does in 2025 as he did in 2024, they will have had the best corner that they could have signed.
Right.
Because out of the free agent class, he was the best one. He's just also 34 years old.
That's the thing with him. If he can do what he did in 24, then fine. But
Mhm.
we got Pat peed, and I have PTSD from it, and I don't.
That's
want
where I'm
to
coming
go
from.
through it again. If that makes
Yeah.
sense, when you can
And-
go
and-
get one of those younger, better corners out there, that's my thing.
I
That was
think
one
the
of things I
thing
wanted.
That's fair. I think the thing with Patrick Peterson was there was the thought in the back of their head that they could transition him to safety and it would go better than it
Yeah.
did. Like I don't think the thought was there when they signed him. Like this is going to be a full-time outside corner for us at his age, especially because it was like a weird fit. He had just come from
Yeah.
Minnesota, playing a couple years where he was like a zone-heavy corner, and then they asked him to come here and play a lot of man coverage at his age.
Yeah.
Like it really just didn't
Yeah.
make sense. So, but
Yeah, that's
Darius
true, too.
Slay like still could play at a very high level last year.
So if
Yep.
they're saving their comp picks for a quarterback moving 26, let's transition to why are they doing so much work on the quarterbacks in 25? I mean, we got Shedeur Sanders and the Syracuse kid in today. They've had Jackson Dart in. They've done a ton of work with Milrow.
Yeah.
They've had Tyler Shuck in. This is not just a couple guys to pique curiosity. This is major work. Like they're gonna actually do something in this draft. If they draft a quarterback, then is that a reaction from Aaron Rodgers fucking around with them, or is that the comp pick wasn't really the plan? Because
Yeah,
I'm confused
yeah.
now.
Right. That's why I keep saying, and maybe I'm way off in terms of the way that I viewed their plan here in 2026 with the quarterback class, because that would be a pretty hard pivot if they do spend an early pick on a quarterback. But like, I think we have to give it credence based off the homework that they're doing. Like, you can talk about, Kahn and Tomlin or whatever, and maybe not attending these pro days and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I don't even know how much credence to put into that going forward. Like maybe they're going to operate a little bit differently than they did under Colbert, where it was like so telegraphed. Like last year, Futanu, like, Pat Meyer was there, sure, but like, Kahn and Tomlin were not, and he was their first round pick, which broke a trend. So maybe there's going to be more credence given to guys that they don't necessarily see in person in that capacity. If they bring them in for a pre-draft, I don't know why it's called a top 30, but a pre-draft visit and do all this homework, I think we do have to leave it on the table. A couple of the names you mentioned there, such as like, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, who they've shown a ton of interest in. And honestly, if I was predicting like 2 weeks out right now, what quarterback they're going to end up taking, I think it's Will Howard in the 4th round. Like, I think that's the most likely selection. I'm not saying that anything else is off the table, but if I'm making a prediction, that's the one I'm going with. But those are the two where, like, if you get Aaron, they still make sense, and maybe you can make a case that you're still draft a Jackson Dart for a year and sit him. If you sign Aaron Rodgers, I don't know that they're going to make that heavy of an investment in 25. I really think they're waiting until 26. If you don't land Aaron Rodgers, and I think it's a lot more interesting where maybe it is more in play at 21. And Shedor's the one that's just like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like out of this class, it's certainly the path that I would like to see them go out of the somewhat realistic possibilities, but like discussing that realistic possibilities, what is the chances of him getting to 21? I really don't know, because I wouldn't have thought that it was on the table. But at the same time, is Shedeur wasting his time taking a pre-draft visit to Pittsburgh if he doesn't think it's at all a possibility? I don't know, because a lot of guys will just say like, hey, if you're not picked within the top 10, I ain't coming.
Yeah.
Do
I'm
you-
not coming.
do
Yeah,
you-
exactly.
Do you pull the trigger and take him at 21 if he's there?
I would. I've come around a lot on Shedeur Sanders since like the start of this process. Just going back through and when the Steelers started showing interest, I felt like,
Right.
okay, now I got to do my due diligence on a class I wasn't planning to do due diligence on. Just going through like some of the Shedeur Sanders charting here. Like I know he gets a lot of crap for like people thinking he's like a check down merchant or something like that. 15% of his throws last year were over 20 yards, which is actually more than Cam Ward. I mean, the only things that he really didn't throw were like less than 2% corner routes, less than 4% out routes, less than 10% of his routes were slant routes that he threw, but everything else very efficient in as well. I think he's the most accurate quarterback coming out. I understand that there's physical limitations. I don't think he's the best athlete. And honestly, guys, like the one thing that I am concerned about and why he's more of a fringe first rounder than just a legit first rounder to me is a lot of bad habits that he developed at Colorado because of how bad the offensive line was. I'm not 100% certain what work is going to need to be put in to shake those bad habits. Like some of the footwork is kind of nasty, and he runs himself into a lot of sacks because of the offensive line play. Is this going to be the right ecosystem to break those bad habits, or is any ecosystem going to be able to break those habits?
I think he said Arthur Smith fixed the footwork with Justin Fields, though, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, within
So,
one, I feel like they made significant progress.
If you want to be confident in that, at least we know that maybe that's something that Arthur Smith is actually good at, is helping quarterbacks with that kind of stuff. Maybe.
Well,
That's
You
a
know
fair
what,
point
though?
for sure.
I'm starting to wonder on the Arthur Smith thing because you start to look back at his offenses. He gets a lot of credit for Ryan Tannehill, but he didn't do much with him in Atlanta. And Tannehill was great, then good, then Smith was gone and he fell off the table. Didn't really do much in Atlanta. It looked like he was going somewhere with Justin Fields. We know he didn't have any impact on Russell Wilson. They didn't get along. So I'm wondering if that's maybe a little overrated that he could fix somebody's footwork. But I agree with Zach. I mean, and I've been, if you follow the podcast, you guys know, I've been saying all along, I wouldn't trade. Don't trade up. But if he falls, I think it is due diligence. That's why they had him in for a visit, because now there's real buzz he might fall.
If he starts falling, I'm working the phones. I'm shopping it. The Browns are going to want to trade up. Maybe the Giants want to trade up. Somebody wants to trade up.
Oh, is in trading the pick?
Yeah,
The Steelers?
yeah, absolutely. I'm not taking Shedeur Sanders at 21. I'm not.
I think from my only question to that is like, wouldn't every team ahead of the Steelers also be thinking the same?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't pick 20? The Broncos trade 20 to somebody.
Right.
I mean, it's possible for sure. But
Yeah.
as the longer he drops, if people, I'm working the phones until he's gone, and then I make a decision after that. I just don't. I think a guy that's patient in the pocket and doesn't have a lot of athleticism is exactly a recipe for disaster with his team. The way these tackles block, the way, it's just, I don't see him working out here. I just don't. I'm not a fan.
He's an anticipatory thrower. He's good at walking up to the line and seeing.
Yeah, but who's running anticipatory routes? They're running go routes here. It's Pickens and DK running deep, and then maybe Pat Fryermuth will do that a little bit.
You're not going to see him on the field this year, though. I don't think. I think it'd be Rodgers.
Okay, I was just saying. I think I understand the trepidation because of the specific situation, but like, I really think that Shedeur's a guy that I would feel comfortable with that value. Like, if you felt better, I guess, about the tackles and feeling like you had that receiver to complement what they currently have. I don't know. I think that's an interesting conversation too. Like, are they still missing the type of receiver that they need for Aaron or for Shedeur, whoever it might be, in
100%.
terms of like, you feel good about those two guys in terms of what they can do on the outside, but like, I still think that there's one missing, regardless of how you feel about Calvin Austin, who had a little bit of a breakout last year. No, I mean, there shouldn't be any expectation for Roman Wilson. Whatever he gives you, I think, is a bonus.
Right.
It's a lottery ticket at this point. But I still feel like they're missing another dude within that room. And not only somebody that can contribute in the slot, but like, who right now, if DK or GP go down, Ben Skoronek's a starting outside receiver. Like that, as much as I appreciate Ben Skoranek and what he
My
does.
guy.
24 all over again. That's what it is.
I literally, this is a funny
Ouch.
story real quick regarding Ben Skoranek. So I had the opportunity to go onto the field after a couple games last year. And the first game that I was out on the field was after Monday Night Football against the Giants. I can't remember. He made a tackle or something on special teams. He made a real nice play. And I was like, hey, I know this is completely random. You don't know who I am. I just need you to know how much I love you. And he was like, what the heck? And I was like, you don't understand how much I appreciate a receiver that is so good at special teams, like as good as you are at them. And he like dapped me up. I was like, thanks, bro. I appreciate it so much. Probably just thought it was going to be a one-off. The next game that I was out on the field for, he came up to me and he like recognized me. He's like, bro, what are you doing out here? So I told him like I was boys with Pat and stuff. And he's like, bro, I hope I see you on the field after every game. You make me feel so much better about myself.
Jeez. Wow.
That's awesome.
So yeah, Ben and I got a good relationship now. But yeah, as much as I love Skoronek's contributions, I'm not so sure that I'd feel great about him being a starting outside receiver if something happened to Metcalf or Pickens.
That leads us to a question: Is George Pickens going to be here by the beginning of the season? They're going to end up dealing him out.
I think, and this is for the ideal situation for the Steelers, is they're able to use him as like their own rental this year. Like, I don't think they want anything to happen this year. They want him to play out the contract. I think that's where it's going to get dicey though. Like, because from my perspective, the way that I'm looking at it, team absolutely wants him here, at least for 2025. From his perspective, he's pushing it. Like, he's seeing other guys get paid. He's extension eligible this summer. And do the Steelers, we're only 2 weeks away and I haven't heard a ton about this, but do they have the foresight to say, yeah, this is probably going to get ugly this summer. We don't want to deal with it. Let's just ship him away and let somebody else pay him. Or do they try to corral him for an entire season. Because if things do get ugly this summer after the draft, okay, well now the time has already passed where you could have gotten
Exactly.
a replacement, and you're waiting until
Yes.
2026 to get that capital. So it's they're really going to be rolling the dice, in my opinion, if they do hold on to him beyond the draft. But we're only 2 weeks away, and I know like people have tried to create some smoke there. They're
Yeah,
not
there's
like
been nothing.
they're certainly not shopping him. Teams might be calling, and would they deal him if they got the right price? Probably. I think he's like I could see both. I think it's a double-edged sword with this draft class, because I think because of the lack of wide receiver talent, it makes him more valuable, but he's also harder to replace because of what
Yeah.
this
Right.
draft class offers
That's a good point.
at that position, unless you're
But-
taking one in the first round.
I still think they have to draft one early in case. They can't take that chance. They can't take the chance of after the draft him going, oh, well, I want a new contract or whatever, and I'm going to sit out or whatever and give them a big problem.
Oh, he's going to do that. There's no doubt about it.
I hope not.
If you think George Pickens is going to be quiet in a contract here, you're out of your mind.
That's why you can't
You're
get them.
crazy.
They got to take one early. They have to.
Well, one thing you got to remember though too is if he walks, they're going to get a third rounder for him because he's going to get a nice.
Yeah, but it's getting to that point. You
Yeah,
put up with
right.
6 months of hell.
you
I'm
can't-
telling you.
But you can't. I mean, at this point, you're guaranteed a third rounder no matter what happens. So if you can get a second, yeah, of course, move him. But if you can't get a second or at least an early third, then there's no point. Hey, no matter what he does, there's no point in not just waiting and getting the comp pick for next year.
What if it was like a fourth, but also a receiver back in the deal or something like that?
Yeah.
That's on the receiver, but I like that. I like that thinking. I love
Yeah.
that thinking.
Who would the receiver be? That you?
I don't know. I'm thinking like I know there's a lot of talk about like Green Bay, like they have a lot of the same type of receiver.
do.
They don't have
I'd
like
take any of them.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that receiver core. That'd be a good one to pluck one from. Yeah.
Like okay, so I'm thinking like Steelers fans would probably hate him because he had a lot of drops over the last couple of years. Like Dontavian Wicks, the
Yeah.
advanced numbers love him. Like he's
Yeah.
the fourth
Yeah.
best
He was-
separator at the position.
No, that's a good dude. He was projected
Yeah.
to have a really good season this past season.
But he
Yeah.
had, he was like the 8th highest drop percentage or something. Like he drops
the
a
one
lot. He had a
thing,
lot of
right?
drops last year.
Yeah.
But
He had Deontay Johnson. We can live with that.
hey,
Deontay Johnson's still
you know,
out there.
honestly, if you were trying to just again, that this would never happen. But if you were to try to pick like one receiver that they need to complement this room right now, like that's
The perfect
right
one,
guy
right?
that you're
The perfect
talking
one.
about. Yeah.
It is. Yep.
Where does he land? Does he land anywhere? He's going to land on some team.
He'll sign a 1 year,
Yeah.
probably close to vet min with like a bunch of incentives.
Yeah, would have to.
Winnipeg.
Contract. I mean,
I heard Winnipeg really likes him.
We joke, but man, he really burned so many bridges last year. It's
dude, he
it's
could have
incredible.
just stayed in Carolina and been super productive on a bad team, and then
Yeah.
gotten a bag in free agency.
Or even
But-
in Baltimore, he could have been a playoff guy, made a couple catches, made himself millions. Instead, he blows that up too. It's crazy.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall why they all hated each other so much because he didn't really. I mean, yeah, he kind of fell down, and okay, I get it, but all the shit people gave Aaron Rodgers about the Mike Williams thing when he said he ran the wrong route, Lamar got away scot free with basically freezing out Deontay Johnson because he screwed up one route.
This is my guy Trent. I'm certainly not advocating for. I'm advocating for a Deontay Johnson within the offense.
not the Deontay
For a vet minimum, I wouldn't hate it. I mean, let's be honest. If you can get his head on straight, you get a home run. That's a big if. But
Yeah,
boy,
I
one
think
wide
that
receiver
there's
room.
a,
Pickens in a
there's a lot
contract
of-
year, Deontay Johnson and DK
maybe Aaron
Metcalf.
Rodgers throwing in the ball. Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah.
I'm here for it though. Let's do it. Let's
Hey,
have some chaos.
We missed this question from Adam. I think it's an interesting one. Where would Sanders go in the 26th draft? Me personally, I heard Palazzolo today on Pony, and I thought he had an interesting point about, hey, what would you do about next year's class? There's no guarantee next year's class is good because Arch Manning could easily sit and wait till the 27 class with NIL money. And then all of a sudden,
Same with Lenore Sellers. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
tanking for Newsmeyer. I mean,
Newsmeyer could end up being pretty good though. I think a lot of people like him.
he
He has a
could.
big year at LSU.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Nico at
the Tennessee kid. Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
Tennessee kid.
My
could end up
guy,
being-
honestly, my guy right now is Cade Klubnik out of Clemson. I love his game. Watch a ton of him.
I've heard a lot of talk about him too,
obviously.
being a potential big time guy.
I think he's going to have and now he needs to take a significant leap. It's just the trajectory that I've seen up to this point makes me think he's going to be that dude to take that leap this year. There's Sam Levitt at Arizona State that people have talked about. A little bit further. Yeah, Drew Aller. Yeah. So I mean, but as of right now, the way that if I had to look at it, we know what Shedeur is coming into the draft as a prospect. The way we look at it, these kids still have to take a significant leap next year. So it's kind of hard. But I have a hard time thinking he'd still be within my top 4 of next year's class. What he is.
I think if they all play well, he's the last of the 4 that you mentioned. I mean.
So if you're saying if Arch and Lenoris don't come out, but all the rest are, or
no, if Arch and they come out, then he's
okay.
He's better.
I think that would put him somewhere either bottom 2nd, early 3rd. I could go there.
Bear in mind, everybody's going to be fighting to get Arch Manning too. With that, if he did come out first overall, so right off the bat, especially the Mannings, we give Dion lots of hell, but the Mannings, who are famous for this, would come out and say, those top 8 teams, nope, he's going.
Well, I think that's why people are worried from what the Mannings did with,
right
back in that draft. People are worried that Dion's going to do the same thing. And what people are really concerned about, if things go wrong, if things start going bad, you got Deion Sanders with the biggest, platform of all. Everything he says, people are going to gravitate towards, and he's going to stick up for his son, you would think. So
which is why I have my own, and I understand pretty much all the qualms in regards to Mike Tomlin, but I think that's a point where he actually it would benefit for him to be the guy with where Shedeur is going. I think a lot of other situations, another spot that we've mentioned or that has been mentioned for Shedeur has been the New Orleans Saints. Okay, first time head coach and Kellen Moore. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a tricky situation to navigate potentially with Dion. Alan brought this up to me today, the Browns, right? Where it's Stefanski kind of in limbo, depending on how things go, they really got to get it right the next time they take a shot at quarterback. If it is Shedeur, that could also get super ugly and interesting. I think the benefit to having Mike Tomlin in situations where this, if it were Shedeur coming in with Dion, I think there's a large level of respect there. And I wouldn't have as many questions about how that would go as I would if it was somewhere else, like Cleveland or New Orleans.
The only good thing about the Saints would be Clint Kubiak's the OC, which would be a really good thing.
Kubiak's in Seattle now.
What?
Oh, that's right.
Did he really? I didn't see that.
When they went with the Kellen Moore brought somebody over from the Eagles, I believe, but
and
Kubiak wasn't retained. Yeah, Kubiak wasn't retained.
Wow, so that guy got another team got a crack.
So they have.
I'm a little jealous of that.
Kubiak's back with Sam Darnold, where he had in San Fran. He was working, and a lot of people thought those two would go together. Which, by the way, Sam Darnold would be the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback if it wasn't for Mike Tomlin. I'll just drop that nugget here right now.
Really, Mike Tomlin didn't want him.
Jeez.
So Tomlin wanted him. This is I believe I've talked about this on a podcast before, but I haven't really put this out there a ton. Top to bottom, pretty much organizationally, they wanted Sam Darnold going into free agency. Sam Darnold wanted to be in Pittsburgh. They actually offered him a contract pretty much structured the exact same way as Seattle did. The difference is, despite Seattle only guaranteeing him money in year 1, they told him that he would be there for at least 2 years. Tomlin did not want to do that. He said that I don't lie to my players, and we don't want to offer any guaranteed money beyond 2025. The thing that I find super interesting about that is, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for the player, but to say that you don't like to lie to your players 1 year removed from the Kenny Pickett situation, I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Mason Rudolph was like a word.
Arthur Smith is a massive Sam Darnold fan.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
more than Justin Fields?
Yes.
Wow.
I think almost, I'm not saying universally, but I think largely within the organization, they were okay moving on from both quarterbacks.
So Darnold basically was the main target then.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Interesting.
Wow.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Me either.
Well,
The last couple of games worried me.
Super interesting that they wouldn't guarantee him 2 years, because even if you draft a guy next year, ideally, even if you get him in the first round, ideally, if you got a guy where he could just sit and learn. I mean, I'm very much in the Tom Brady school for this. I remember back in the 80s when the Giants took Hostetler with Sims in his prime, and then won him a Super Bowl because he sat for 5 years and was ready to go.
Tomlin saying that makes
And I
me wonder
think-
if he really wanted Darnold. Honestly,
Yeah, I
You know?
honestly, I'm not 100% sure in terms of like how strongly he felt about him. I know Omar and Artie, that was their preference out of all the available options. That's what they wanted to do.
Wow.
In terms of what you were saying there with quarterback city, I think that's especially prevalent when you look at like the way that the college game is played now, where it's just like as far possibly removed as it could be from professional football in terms of the way that college offenses are run nowadays. Like not a lot of pro style offenses run. Like you see a ton of guys like running over to the sidelines to get their plays still, where it's like
Yeah.
so up tempo, where it's not even in the rhythm of this NFL game. Like so that I mean, it's a large transition for them to make, and then ask them to step in and play right away is hard, which is why it's so impressive what we've seen guys like Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud do over the last 2 years. But yeah, I think that's a good point too, is, you know, even if you're drafting somebody, whether it's this year or next year, do we want them to start immediately?
Yeah,
before we get off quarterbacks, what's your take on the Jalen Milroe thing? There was a lot of smoke with that for a little while. It's kind of died down now.
You do this every time to trigger
This
me.
is
Doug. Just bring up Jalen Milroe as many times.
You got to hash it out.
Like,
I mean,
jeez.
we've all
This
got
is,
our triggers. Jackson Dart,
him being invited to the
Jalen
draft
Milroe,
changes
Shador.
everything.
This
Changes
is
everything.
a great day for me to be on here, by the way, because I was actually talking with somebody trying to get an idea in terms of how the organization felt about quarterbacks and who their preferences were. So, you know, I mentioned Artie in terms of the way he felt about Darnold, which is why it makes sense. He's a big Tyler Shuck fan.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Like Shuck or Shador, I think would be the preference for him. I know Omar really likes Shador. I don't think Art Rooney knows what's going on.
Shocker. Shock.
And Jalen Milroe, I think, is Tomlin's guy, certainly within this draft class.
Son of
Tracks.
a bitch.
It tracks.
Did
it
not
tracks.
want to hear
Because
that.
I
Didn't wanna
think,
hear
I
that.
think, he's chasing the ceiling, which I understand. I honestly think Jalen Milroe is not somebody that I would want to turn the keys over to right away in 2025. I don't think he can play quarterback right now. I think what's interesting is like I was actually much more impressed with his. I'm reading that hashtag.
David
I was
hates
actually
Jalen
much more impressed with
I
his
actually
ability
don't.
to go through progressions than what I was expecting to be. I mean, the accuracy is the question. Like, and I don't know that that's ever going to get fixed. And you can't play quarterback at the NFL level being as inaccurate as he was there.
Bro,
But
16
I think that there's
touchdowns at Alabama. Like, that's it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hear you. The production certainly wasn't there, and it certainly didn't he didn't take that step in 2025 from
Yeah.
2020.
That was a brand new coaching staff too, though, right? I mean, there are some ways you could explain that away.
Shut up. Shut
I
up.
mean,
Because
Listen,
he
I
ran
don't
a
have to
4
convince you.
You
He
all
told you.
because
Mike
he
Tomlin's
ran
the one
a
that likes
4
him.
He ran a 4-3, and Dave just
I think
drools.
I
over
think
his
the interesting
kickout.
thing
Ugh.
from that though was, you know, Artie Smith wasn't mentioned for Jalen Milroe. And I think a lot of people were expecting that because of like the type of offense he runs and people assuming like he was super high on Justin Fields. That would be a guy that he would be super interested in. I'm not saying he's not. That's from the information I've gathered, that's the preference for each of them at the quarterback position. In terms of my personal feeling about Milroe, I still would list him as my QB3 within this class just because outside of those top two, Cam Warren, Shador, I'm chasing the upside over the floor of what everybody else is.
Here I am alone on Jackson Dart Island, waiting for someone to jump on the island with me. No one's
And
coming.
we could have the Jackson Dart conversation in terms of why I'm not a fan of him.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Everybody that comes on,
Everyone hates him. We
That's
get
the
it. You might as well
best part
pile on
about
too.
this. Zach, every guy we've had on here, not a fan. No one's a fan of Jackson Dart. It's
Tony
great.
Pauline
this-
was not a fan. David almost said, "That's it, I'm out."
The sad thing is, like, I want it to be. Like, I think aesthetically, like, if you just look at him, he looks the part of what an NFL quarterback should be. And I certainly appreciate the toughness and understand, you know, not necessarily the best situation that he went into and he had to pick up a new offense, stuff like that. But he went into an offense which is like as easy as it is to pick up in terms of Lane Kiffin's offense, RPO heavy. They don't make him, you know, go through progressions, rarely had to go through reads. It's one read and rip it. I do think that the arm strength is probably a little, I don't want to say underrated, but I think people maybe downplay it too. Like it's gotten to the point where maybe it is a little bit underrated, like the way we're talking about it. The one thing, it's more so on the deep ball where I think a lot of people like and this is where people overrate. I think it's underrated in terms of his ability to get the ball out, like the velocity, and get it across the middle of the field. I think people overrate his ability because of all the long touchdowns. That thing hangs in the air forever. I mean, the reason that it's so successful is very schemed up one-on-ones where the receiver's just beating their man by so much, getting so much separation, where it's a touchdown. I mean, you go through some of the charting here last year in terms of his success. The only things that he did super well: comebacks, curls, slants, flats, checkdowns, posts.
He's a Steeler.
Post, nines, corners, outs, all under 50% in terms of his efficiency. And then you look at like the route percentage of what he was doing, through more corners, nines, post, and curl routes than any, despite 3 of those being the least efficient of any throw that he could make. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot of questions about him. Certainly not something I would invest a first round pick in. I do think there's some intriguing things about him where, like, on day 2, you talk me into it, but
That's
at
how
21, yeah. I think this is a conversation because of the draft class more than anything else. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
That question was about Shador being in the 26 draft class. Yeah, that same question about Jackson Dart from me seems lower.
Yeah. I don't think it's lower, but it's
In the 26 class, you think Jackson Dart is?
Yeah, I was gonna say, really?
Come on now.
listen. You guys, and we can all disagree on Jackson Dart, but the more I read and listen, the more people say he's going before Shedeur Sanders. The reason Shedeur Sanders is rumored to go 21 or further to the Steelers is because Jackson Dart is the popular pick to New Orleans now. Jackson
Someone
Dart's
said top 10. Did somebody
New
roll out
Orleans is
top
9.
10?
Yeah, New Orleans has 9. Mel Kiper put him at 9 and said he
So did
wasn't coming off of that because last year he had Bo Nix at 10 to the Broncos and got, or 12 to the Broncos, and got talked out of it on his final mock, so he didn't get it right. He said that's not happening this year with Jackson Dart. He's keeping him there,
So we'll
which
see.
I think it's very possible.
I remember a couple of years ago in the Pickett draft, New Orleans was heavily rumored on Matt Corral. And I'm sorry, if you go back and watch their tape, Matt Corral was a better quarterback than Jackson Dart. And where is he?
Yeah. You see, he wants to trigger me and get me. He does it every podcast. He wants to see my blood pressure go through the roof. I'm not falling for it anymore, Bob. I told you. All right, I think
I love one of Jackson Dart's teammates, Trey Harris.
The wide receiver. Yeah.
We're trading if we're trading George Pickens, I think he's one of the best replacements in this class. Along with, like, if you're going to spend an earlier pick, Jaden Higgins obviously would make a ton of sense.
Yeah, we're all Jaden Higgins fans here. That definitely. All right, let's talk about TJ. His Instagram post has got the world, dropping the deuce on us, literally. What do you think? There's anything to it now? Other people are reporting that he's not happy with the contract negotiation so far. Blah blah blah. I know a lot of people had said. Well, I've heard people say in the past that the reason the Steelers don't bring in high-priced free agents is they don't want to piss off the players they already have that have been with the team. And it seems like this DK Metcalf contract and trade has kind of sparked some of this from TJ. It's like, you bring somebody who's never played for the Steelers once and you give them $30 million a season. I'm here. I should be the top paid edge rusher, and I don't have a contract right now. So do you think there's something to that? And is there something to, or is this all smoke and nothing?
So the one thing I want to start out by saying is I, for the most part, have had like no qualms with the way that Rap Sheet has gone about his business here in his reporting. But I think what's getting lost in a lot of this is, like, that was just straight up an opinion. Like, he even stated it as an opinion, and everybody's putting it out there as a report. Like, he very clearly, if you like watch the entirety of that availability on NFL Network, said, like, in the past or in other situations, this has meant so. No information regarding specifically TJ Watt's situation on if this means anything for him. I mean, like, what could it mean? I don't know. We had a lot of fun on Steelers Afternoon Drive yesterday saying, like, what it could mean. Like, you know, Jackson Dart and Shedeur Sanders both wear number 2. Is he endorsing one of them? Aaron Rodgers only has 1 Super Bowl. Is he trying to win him a second? Was he on the toilet? Number 2. I don't know. But I'll be like, I've given some information in terms of stuff that I've heard. I've not heard anything about this, and I feel like way too much time has passed, an entire day plus now, where it's like, if he was requesting a trade or like trying to force their hand in some way, like, we'd have more information on that. So I really don't know. And also, like, the timeline of things, Like whether or not TJ likes it, he knows how things work for the Steelers. Unless he's trying to like totally break their trend. When have they ever given out an extension 2 weeks before the NFL draft? Like he knows the timeline, especially based off his last contract. Now
Right.
they had to break the mold in terms of what they do in terms of guaranteed
Yeah,
money
they
the
did.
last time that they did a contract for him. So now maybe he's trying to break their trend in terms of the timeline for things here. But I don't know. Like honestly, he'd probably be doing them a favor if they could get something done right now, as opposed to waiting on Micah Parsons and Trey Hendrickson.
Before the
They've already
draft.
Missed the boat on the Myles Garrett stuff, obviously, and who was the other edge rusher that signed? Oh, Max Crosby.
Max
And those
Crosby,
likes,
that
but
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I'd be very surprised if this gets super contentious. But you never know.
What'd you make
You
it?
never know.
What'd you make of JJ coming out and saying, "Hey, there was probably a hometown discount to be had last year,
Yeah.
but the Steelers said no, sorry, we don't negotiate 2 years out." Which, I mean, to me, if you know you're going to possibly have all these edge rushers hit the market, why wouldn't you just
Sure.
break the mold for one?
Yeah. I
Especially
fully
TJ
agree.
Watt.
I fully agree. It just goes back to like them, not breaking tendency. And I don't, maybe that is something that will become more common. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks do that, especially like Josh Allen just redoing his deal, whatever, with how many years left. Like typically it was always, hey, 1 year left on the deal. We're going to do an extension. That's still how the Steelers go about business, but maybe they're going to have to change their ways if everybody else is going to start doing things differently too.
Yeah.
And I'd argue that you're absolutely right. You like have the foresight to say, look at all these edge rushers hitting the market. We should be out in front of this, not only because it makes sense, like positionally when you look at the group that's hitting free agency, but also just because like that's the trend of the league in general, the way things are going. So I absolutely, absolutely, they should have done business before.
Yeah. And you get it done 1 year earlier.
I guess the
terms of end of
question-
contract too.
The question is though, like, are you guys all wanting them to continue to do business with TJ Watt?
See,
Ooh.
that worries me. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I think we saw a crack in the armor this past season. I think we've seen the best of TJ Watt. So you're paying for past performance for sure. And how about, is this going to be 3 years, 120 million, 60, 70 guaranteed? That's a little scary for a 31-year-old edge rusher.
Well, he wants one penny more than Myles Garrett got because those two hate
I
each
don't know
other.
if that's
I'm not saying that's smart, but I'm thinking that's what he's going to want
Yeah.
and hold out for and say.
how old's Myles
Add
Garrett? He's a
something
couple
you
years
can-
younger, right? At least two.
I believe
2 or
so,
3 years
yes.
younger.
Same
I
draft
think it's
class.
one and a half. So like it
One
looks,
and a half?
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money for a team that might switch
Yeah.
to a rookie quarterback next year.
Hey, what's
Yeah.
Ted DiBiase always say? Everybody's got a price. Let's see
Yes.
what's
I
the
think-
price.
It is. I mean, to Dave's point, it is pretty concerning when you look at the last couple years in terms of like the end of season, whether it is like him not being able to go in the playoff game against Buffalo, and then last year the production after that Philly game where he just like completely disappeared due to injury. Obviously missed a large portion of 2022 with the partial pec tear. So there's certainly got to be questions about that. It's funny you threw out the number you did though, like 3,120 is kind of exact. Like 4 or 5 years is where I get more concerned about it. I think you can live with a 3-year deal, and basically within that framework of the money that you were talking about too, I think would be completely fine. I'm curious if he goes for, like, you're only saying half of that guaranteed. That's the
Yeah.
part where I think there's probably could be some contention. I think 3,120, if that was the offer that he would take right now, I think it would be signed.
Probably.
So you think he wants more?
Yeah.
I think he definitely wants just a little bit more than Garrett. And bear in mind, Micah Parsons, who also has given TJ Watt a lot of shit on social media, he hasn't signed. So he's probably sitting waiting to see what TJ gets to make sure he's top of the market.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
and I think Micah's a different, just because he's like significantly younger. Like I think he's in a different bucket than like
Oh,
Miles and TJ. I can understand go beating one
Yeah,
for
around
one,
same.
trying
Yep.
to one up each other. But like to me, Micah's in a completely different bucket than those two. But yeah, if I'm Micah, absolutely. I'm not even like, especially the comments that Jerry's made about the situation.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
like
It's
yeah,
shit
I'm
on
the
his
last
agent
one to
and the whole
sign.
nine
Yeah.
yards. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah, would you listen to a trade offer if something came in? I mean, you'd have to, right? If you're doing smart business, you got to at least listen. If someone like, I keep bringing up the Lions, they're this close to a Super Bowl. Hutchinson's coming off an injury.
Mhm.
If they came in with 2 firsts and something, how do you say no to that?
I think if you get the Khalil Mack deal, you have to do it.
It's tough.
I get.
Yeah,
know.
see, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that I would always listen, right? Like, and there's
Yes.
obviously you
Yes.
just mentioned Ted DiBiase. Everybody's got a price. We can get back to that in terms of a return for a trade too. I just, and again, not that you necessarily need to be able to sell things. This team hasn't done a great job of that anyway, like selling things to the fan base from a PR perspective as of late anyway. But that would be a really tough one for them to turn around and be able to sell, in my opinion. Like, I think there's a lot of people within this fan base, regardless of the direction of the team, want TJ to be a one helmet guy, just like Cam Hayward. And for him to not be, man, those first round picks better end up leading them to a Super Bowl.
I don't believe in the one helmet guy stuff. I mean, if Troy Polamalu wasn't a one helmet guy, if Mike Webster wasn't, if Franco Harris wasn't, then what are we
Rod
talking
Woodson.
about here?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. If people are emotionally attached to TJ Watt, and I love him too, but we have to be realistic. He's 31, coming off a mediocre season.
Well,
Are we a Super Bowl contender anytime soon?
Mediocre for him though is still really fucking
I mean,
good around
all right,
mid, though.
for
That's
him.
the-
That's what
that's
I
the
mean.
thing.
For him,
Like,
you see the cracks.
you have to
You can't
understand
deny
he's
it. Look,
otherworldly, and then there's his mediocre.
well,
is
if you're paying
still really
45
good.
million, you want otherworldly. You don't want
Okay.
12 sacks.
But he's
I thought
top 5 in every category still, Dave. His bad was still top 5 in every defensive category in the league, which is nuts to even think, but he was.
I thought Starkey had a good point on this morning when he was like, hey, so TJ Watt, you've had him for 7 years. He's a great player. Don't want to see TJ go. But at the same time, you're 0-4 in the playoffs. You have not been competitive during his whole career in a playoff game. So what are you going to do? Not win a playoff game?
Yeah, well, yeah. If you're saying that to blame him, it's wrong. But if you're saying
No,
they're going to lose either way,
They said it wasn't his fault.
yeah.
Yeah, he's saying it the other way around. The whole you're going to lose with or without him.
I think, we're talking about the number in itself, which I get in terms of like the cap number, but to me, it's more about the cap percentage. Like, this is where Omar Khan is really good at, knowing
Yeah.
the numbers and the way that the cap is going to continue to go up. I just wonder if they have like the foresight in terms of the way that that's going to continue to go and maybe structure it according to. So if it's a shorter deal, like it's only 3 years, it's maybe not as prevalent. But if you're going to structure this thing out and go to like 4 or 5 years and have bigger numbers down the road. Now, again, does TJ go for that, or does he realize, oh, they're trying to set this up so my contract's cuttable? I don't know. But that's something that popped in my mind too, with trying to line it up, understanding the way that the cap is going to continue to increase.
I mean, if you wanted to just say, hey, you're getting more than Miles, go 3 years, 125, and guarantee the whole fucking thing.
I don't like. Yeah,
It's
I
only
like the
3 years.
reaction.
I
It's
don't
only
wanna-
3 years.
I know it's only 3 years, but he could fall off the cliff next year, and then you're up $40 million for the next 2 seasons and dead cap.
Just
for
all in a signing bonus too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I
You
might
could-
be
You could structure
alone
it.
in this, but I'm nervous now. He's been injured the last 2 seasons. He's 31.
3 really.
Not
Last
everyone-
3 seasons, really.
Technically.
22 toward the
Yeah,
cap.
you're right.
Yeah,
Not
you
everyone's
gotta-
Cam Hayward and just gets better and better and better and keeps going. The 99% of the league starts to fall off in their 30s. So
Well, ask
I don't
yourself
know.
this question: Is there one guy if there's one guy you could pick that would overcome age and have a very, very long, successful career? It's TJ Watt.
Then again, there's also the question of, does he really want to go for 5 years?
Yeah, is TJ the type of player that would be okay seeing himself physically diminish and turning into just like a really good run defender that gets like 6 to 8 sacks? I
Right.
don't know. Or does pride get in the way?
Mm.
And if I were TJ, I'd be looking to get on a playoff team, contender. I mean, there's a good chance he never wins a playoff game in his career at this point.
Go
Yeah.
go home and play with the Packers?
Yeah. The Vikings,
Look,
their
it-
defensive coordinator.
We've talked about the Bills being a possible trade partner. If you're Buffalo, you are close. You go get TJ Watt. You give us this year's first, next year's first, and a second. Why wouldn't you at least call and offer it? Because let's face it, you're Patrick Mahomes away from the Super Bowl. You all of a sudden throw TJ Watt on that defense with Josh Allen throwing the ball on the other side of the ball. Now maybe you could go into Kansas City and wreck shit.
Didn't they get Bosa? They got Bosa now, right?
Yeah, imagine both of them.
Yeah.
Look what Philly did.
I mean, if Aaron Rodgers flames out here and you're and you're getting a rookie quarterback in 26, if I'm TJ Watt, I'm like, I'm never going to see the playoffs ever again in my career. I'd be like, trade me now, get me somewhere where I can.
Well, no. So like the reason that was I'm 100% on board for listening, but my tune did shift a little bit when we went from NFC teams to an AFC team. I got to admit.
Yeah, that's a little.
Yeah.
Rough. Yeah, watch them come in here.
Probably,
and beat
probably
the
not
snot
the
out of
best
us.
idea. Yeah.
Well, if you did tear it down, and if you trade TJ, you're tearing it down.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the Steelers. This is all conjecture because there's what we think they should do and what they actually will do. The likelihood is they are not going to trade him; they're going to pay him, and that's how the team will think. But if you did it, you'd be tearing it down. So, do you care that Buffalo got the last 3 years of his contract? If it's good, if you're 3 years at least away from contending.
If I had my preference, I'd still send him to the NFC.
Sure.
Going
Preference, yeah.
My problem is Buffalo didn't need him to kick our ass, let alone get him.
it just gets incrementally worse if he's there.
This is more so an opinion with a little bit of just like knowledge in terms of like I really don't think that there's an alignment of vision in terms of the Steelers top brass. I think Omar Khan would be willing to trade TJ Watt. I don't think Mike Tomlin and Rooney would.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. That really does, because you see it. My biggest complaint with the Steelers is they don't know how to self-assess. They really do think that they're Aaron Rodgers away from being a serious contender in the AFC, and they're really not. I mean, Aaron Rodgers would have to be 10 years ago Aaron Rodgers for this team to really be a serious. And then there's all kinds of
MVP
other
Rodgers,
ones.
basically.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. And I think that stems from Mike Tomlin. I think Mike Tomlin always believes that he can will this team to the finish line, and he's been proven.
I think that's kind of like where, because for the longest time I've been on the opposite end in terms of the Mike Tomlin conversation, where I was like always pushing back on people that were ready to move on. I'm not saying that I'm like somebody that's like, oh yeah, we got to get him out of here. But the reason that I'm more open to the conversation actually has absolutely nothing to do with his coaching. I think he overachieves as a coach, but he has to overachieve as a coach because of the roster not being where it should based off his input into the roster.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's too much power in this team. We've talked about it a lot.
His impact on the draft is what's hurt this team, in my opinion.
It's everything.
I will say, I really think that, like, honestly, Omar, I'm not saying that he's trying to diminish what he does or anything like that. I think he's stepped into a larger role in this, but I really think like Andy Weidel is the draft guy. Like certainly Tomlin, large involvement and everything like that, but like Andy has done the draft board the 2 years that he's been on board with Omar here. And very large say. So like for an assistant general manager, I don't know that people talk about enough in terms of like his role within this roster construction either.
Yeah, that makes.
I figured it's a
totally
big
tracks.
impact. I figured it makes sense.
It's interesting what you're saying because we've kind of speculated that we think there's a real behind.
I think it's
power struggle.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I think if you're paying attention, it's pretty clear to see in terms of like where the influence is, what they're trying to do, versus what is actually being done. Like, I think it's great in terms of the way that they've at least tried to invest in the trenches. I have no clue if it's going to work out, if they're going to hit, like if Broderick Jones and Troy Fautano are going to be the answer at tackle and stuff like that. But very clearly, they're trying to follow a mold of QB proofing the offense like the Philadelphia Eagles have. Whether it works or not, I have no clue, because there's obviously a level of talent evaluation that has to go into that. You just can't pick the positions the way that they did. But yeah, I mean, I think if you pay attention to the organization and everything that they do, it is clear to see like there's some type of lack of cohesion in terms of what the vision is.
Right.
Yeah, and offensive line is a great example. We've heard Omar Khan say, yeah, Broderick Jones is going to be our left tackle. Broderick Jones is going to be our left tackle. And he never plays left tackle. Mike Tomlin always keeps him on the right side. And because he liked Dan Moore better for whatever godforsaken reason. But you see that's conflict between the two, because Omar is in there saying.
Well, I think that's what's so interesting in terms of like why it's weird to me that this is why it's weird to me about the Milroe Tomlin thing, is because I think typically Tomlin chases a higher floor than he does the ceiling everywhere else, and that's why Dan Moore played, because he felt better about the consistency that he would bring and knowing what the floor was, as opposed to like, oh, Broderick could be this great player over there, but my God, if it goes bad, like. Yeah. So I think that it's just that part of it is weird to me because I think everywhere else, and it's the same reason they're interested in bringing in Aaron Rodgers to try to go 10-7 and win a single playoff game, is they're chasing a floor of a team as opposed to the ceiling.
Yep. And
I wonder if you think, Zach, they're just waiting for him to pass Noel so Art Rooney can just tout. He won a Super Bowl and he passed Noel as far as the wins go.
I don't know. How far away is he?
Not far, actually. I think it's like 15 or 20 wins.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
we'll find out if he gets a
I
contract.
almost, based off everything I've heard, I'm wondering if Tomlin's going to get rid of Rooney.
Yeah.
I mean,
no,
it's more likely in my opinion. It's just
no, but it's
we know who's in charge over there. It's pretty clear.
Mm-hmm.
He makes all the decisions. Nothing gets done without Mike Tomlin say so.
All of them besides Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
That was Rooney?
So which one?
Rooney said they weren't going to miss out on another great pick quarterback the way his family did with Marino.
We said
that's 100%. Him.
It was the damn Marino thing. I knew it.
Yeah. And it turns out to be maybe you compounded the biggest mistake in franchise history by making the next biggest mistake in franchise history.
Yeah, it backfired.
Well, they didn't draft Jackson Dart yet, so.
Very true.
God, I really liked you, Zach. What's it? Man.
Didn't draft Dan Marino, cut Johnny Unitas, drafted Kenny Pickett. Jackson Dart shoots right.
Yeah, straight to the top. Straight to the top. I told you all, after his first Pro Bowl, you guys are not invited on the podcast. It's going to be me by myself gloating for 45 minutes.
There are like
there
are like 3 or 4 spots where I would really like Jackson Dart. One of them is the Rams at 26. Like I don't think that he's going to get
mentioned
there.
Rams
Like,
several times.
As Stafford's predecessor, as Stafford's, to follow him, I think that would make sense for sure. I mean, Minnesota doesn't need a court. Like anybody that's within that McVay vein runs a similar system.
Miami sits behind till Tua's next concussion and then jumps in there.
What if San Fran was just like, we're not paying?
I know. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
That's what I said about Aaron Rodgers. That's a dark horse for them.
Yeah, he's a Northern California guy too. That would be
because I could see like Shanahan with his ego just being like, it doesn't matter who my quarterback is. This offense is going to hum regardless.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yeah,
could you imagine San Francisco's offense though for 1 year, even with a limited Aaron Rodgers?
I think like Zach said, it doesn't matter really.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy, he's had so many quarterbacks that have done well, except for Trey Lance. So that was the one.
Yeah, but I'm thinking like Jimmy G and Brock Purdy have a level of success, but now you actually give him a top, because I heard today, they were speculating on Rodgers. So the reason you wait for him is because he's still a top 10, 12-ish quarterback, even at 41.
Statistic-wise, you're right. You're right.
I know this is not
last year EPA. He was like 19th, but like what I will say is the second half was good, like legit good.
Yeah.
Like not even just like good for a 40-plus-year-old trying to find some silver linings. And you're talking about that much further away from the Achilles injury. I think there's still something left in the tank. Obviously, question the mobility and like would he be able to hold up behind these tackles, his offensive line? But like
that's been
if he goes somewhere else
all along.
Yeah, if he goes somewhere else, I think you're still getting like top dozen quarterback play.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it'll help this offensive line because he will get rid of the ball. He is not going to stand back there and get hit.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, but is that
that just goes back to like who's that guy that quick winner within the Steelers receiving room right now to give him that outlet?
Yeah.
DK probably.
Yeah.
You can back shoulder
maybe
DK a bunch.
Maybe George is going to play a lot more in the slot this year. And just run some quick slants out of the slot. I don't know.
Do they draft somebody like that? And they finally find a slot that can run routes?
Well, that's why I was saying and it would have made sense in 2 different directions. I don't know that I would have wanted to pay him what he got, especially after giving DK the money. But like when Cooper Kupp got cut, I was like, that's an Aaron Rodgers type receiver right there. Plus, he wouldn't have affected the comp formula because of getting cut. But obviously got more money. And I don't understand that fit. Seattle. Going home for him, I guess.
Right. There's a lot of overpays this free agency, though, in my opinion.
There was a lot of money.
This goes back to Bob's point about not being a great free agency class, but he's having the money. So do you want to throw it around?
The cap went up and there was no free agents to really spend the money on. So
everybody
got paid. Everybody gets paid. That's all I got. Unless anybody else has got anything else before we wrap up.
No, it was great talking with Zach and getting all this inside info.
Yeah, definitely.
Appreciate it.
Hey, you guys got me
Appreciate
on
it
a good
always.
day, to be honest. Like if we would have done this yesterday, I wouldn't have had the stuff about the quarterbacks. So got me on a good
Timing's
day.
everything.
Yep.
Timing's everything, buddy. All
Knowledge
right,
is
don't
power.
forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll be back Thursday night. Sunday for
We'll
our
be
draft
back
special.
Sunday
Today's
for our
Thursday.
draft. Yeah.
Yes, Sunday afternoon. It's been a long day for me, as you could tell. Again, thanks for Zach for coming on. We really appreciate it. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Steel Sanctuary podcast.
But he's not weird or anything, is he?
No, he's totally normal.
I think you should be working at the snack bar. You better relax, Bob.
I mean, normal for us.
All right, let's go. Now you've had enough.
Okay, crazy guy. I'm gonna go home now.